New set design here, or are we arm wrestling? What is this?
I'm always thinking, but if you want to arm wrestle, I'm down.
I'll arm wrestle you.
All right, let's go.
Let's go. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Oh, Jesus, Jesse. All right, I'm not going to embarrass myself. I'm getting there. That actually brings us right to the topic of the video. So Jesse's obviously put on some size and strength. What if you wanted to do that? What if you wanted to get bigger? What are the best exercises, right? The ones with the most bang for your buck that you could possibly do, following the footsteps of young Jesse here, to actually pack in some size? Well, we're going to cover those today, and I'm not just going to show you what those selections are, but I'm going to take you through them with Jesse so you can see the finest points, exactly how to do them to maximize the effectiveness of each of those that you're doing. Sound good?
Sounds great to me.
Let's get it going. So first up, we start where everybody wants to start, if they admit it or they don't, and that's just they just want to build bigger biceps, like
the guns,
like Jesse did. Okay, so for me, there's nothing more effective at building big biceps than a barbell curl. It was a staple exercise for me when I first started out. It should be a staple exercise for everybody out there who wants to build bigger biceps, because even though we know that there are compound exercises, pulling exercises like a row, some people will swear that they're so great for building your biceps. That's not true. They're not going to build bigger biceps more effectively than an actual straight barbell curl. But how do you do them to get the best bang for your buck out of it? You got to do them right. Jesse, pick up the barbell. Here's what I want you guys to focus on. 2 things to do this really, 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 really well. The first thing is, instead of thinking of curling this bar up, I want you to think about lifting it up straight to the sky. So what does that mean? My focus is on my wrists and my hands. So if I think about the flat part of my hand going up towards the ceiling like a waiter would hold the tray, then what happens is you take a little bit of the forearms out of it because they're bent back a little bit, not to overly stress the wrist joint, but just to allow the forearm to be a little bit out of it, and you're lifting straight up to the sky. Do you feel that?
Yes, sir, I do.
All right. Now, that's the first thing you can do right. So if you're just lifting, you're thinking about lifting straight up in the air, it's going to take care of that arc. Turn one side to the side for 1 repetition if you can. Just about there so I can still see with the plate. Now go ahead and do 1 more. As you're lifting, it's going straight up towards there, but you can see what stress it puts on the biceps. All right, rest for 1 second. Okay. The next thing that would be really, really important when you're doing the curl is to focus on how you're moving the weight through space, not just on the way up, but also on the way down. So for me, number 1, the eccentric lowering of the weight is critical.
Okay.
Pick it up. Follow this pace if you want to build bigger arms faster. So lift it up. On the way down, go to my count. 1, 2, 3, right about there. 4, at least 3 seconds, okay? You can get it up there, down, 1, 2, all the time, focusing all the way down until it gets down in front of your thighs, because there's still tension on the biceps as it elongates. Come down, 2, 3, so a minimum of 3, somewhere in that 3 to 4 range. Now, let's say you start to get tired. You want to cheat a rep up. Go ahead and cheat. You still got to go down slow. I don't care how it got up, as long as you're not over-cheating, but you still got to go down slow. Up there and down. Now, you do this, and I promise you, your biceps will blow up. And again, it's just focusing on A, the right exercise, and B, how to do it, because that's what matters most. The second exercise that must find its way into your program if you want to build effectively your chest, your triceps, your shoulders, has got to be a dip. And the thing about the dip is it's sort of an alternative, in this case, to a bench press, but I think a more effective one if we're talking about building muscle on those areas. The bench press is by far a staple strength exercise that we all should do, but I think the dip has a more natural ability to start piling on muscle on your chest because it follows that sort of natural direction that the arms want to travel in if you're trying to create a chest contraction. And at the same time, it gives you the overload on those front delts and also the triceps too.
Not only that, but Mike Metzler also said that this is his favorite exercise for the triceps, shoulders, and chest.
You're right. I actually made a whole video on that. So what's the way to do the dip, though, to do this right? First of all, if you can, weight it. So put a little extra weight around. I'm not interested in you doing 15, 20, 25 different reps for this. Instead, I'd rather see you put some weight around your waist and then do some more reps like Jesse's doing here. How would you do it, though, most effectively? It starts with how you set up in the station. So what a lot of people will do, especially if they're in between sets, they'll be kind of tired, they're resting, they're letting themselves kind of fold over into the dip machine. And then when they go into their next set, okay, I'm up, everything is folded up. You have this hunchback position here. You have the shoulders up, shrugged up near your ears. You've got your shoulders, most importantly, rounded forward. When you start to go up and down from here, I understand where there's a lot of hate directed at the exercise. There doesn't have to be so much hate directed at the exercise if you do it the way I'm showing you. So set your posture beforehand by, instead of being rounded here, conscientiously try to lift your sternum as high as you can and then pull your shoulders down. Look at the difference in that posture, and from there, all you have to do is then release and push through the elbows. And now maintain that throughout, and you've got a much healthier shoulder position just by doing that. And when you get to the bottom of the rep, again, this is where we know we can get that good chest stretch, right? That's another benefit of this, that we get beyond the bench press. We get a deeper stretch here. But more importantly, watch what we can do. So rest for a sec. How we contract our way back up to the top matters too. So I mentioned the more natural chest contraction position being down here. If I were to ask you to contract your chest, you wouldn't go like this. Nope. Right? No one's naturally doing that. No one's even really naturally doing this. They would go like this, or they do like the most muscular pose down here, because that's a more natural plane of motion for us to operate in. So this high to low position. The dip does that. So instead of giving that away, when you're pushing yourself back up to the top, try to imagine your hands squeezing towards each other, even though they won't move because of the fixed placement on these handles. All right, so do that same thing. Come up to the top, get in that good position. On the way down, get that good stretch. Now on the way up, think about squeezing up. You feel that?
Oh, yeah.
It like lifts it from underneath. People that complain about having a saggy chest, or most of the time they're just lacking lower chest development or that side chest development because they haven't built big enough lower pecs. This direction here allows you to target those lower chest fibers better and do so in a more effective way. Now this one is probably one that people never think of when it comes to building muscle, but again, when you're talking about effective exercises, exercises that do exactly what they're supposed to do, not only is this going to build muscle, but it's also going to fortify your shoulders and actually give you a strong upper back that's going to carry over in everything else that you do.
Yeah.
Guess what it might be?
Oh, I know this one. It's a face pull.
It's a face pull. Now, the first thing you can do is don't just set it up with one rope. See, I've given this tip before, and I'll keep doing it, even if gym owners get pissed at me, because it makes the exercise much more effective. That's attached 2 separate ropes to this. Because, Jesse, go ahead and get in position. When you do this, you got to get it right. People don't do this exercise right. There's so many variations. Do the wrong version. They just do that. They are internally rotated, right? They're pulling towards their face, but they're internally rotated at the shoulder with elevation. That doesn't do what I'm looking for it to do in terms of protecting the shoulder. I need you to open up, get the rotator cuffs involved, and to do that, you need to get into these 90-degree angles with your hands. So you're in this position here. Elbows are up. Come up one step a little forward that way. There you go. Elbows are up. Elbows are wide, open at 90 degrees, pulling through here. When you do the exercise, I want you to think about pulling back, and again, creating this thickness up through here, because these muscles are all being pulled in unison together to create that pull. Just like that. Elbows stay high. Yep, never drop the elbows down. There you go. That's the first thing. The second thing is, on the way back in, control this. Don't just let it drop. Don't let the weights in the stack go right back. Don't do that. People think, again, they focus so much on one part of the exercise, but you're costing yourself a lot of the size in the process. If you want to turn this into even more of a muscle builder and get some of the lower traps, what you do is get it back here. Now you just simply raise the arms up overhead. Pressing that will bring in these muscles here a little bit lower down the lower traps to sort of thicken those paraspinal muscles still. But this exercise is not just a corrective exercise. It literally is one that will build the muscles up in the back, because they don't need a lot of weight, but they do need some attention. And if you do this, guys, I promise you, the face pull will become one of the biggest back building exercises you've ever added to your routine. This fourth exercise might be a little bit controversial to some in terms of its role as a muscle builder, but I can tell you there is nobody that has built a big deadlift who doesn't have a big, thick, wide, developed back. It just doesn't happen. It's
true.
And it happened with Jesse too. You could check it out right here. This is literally what young little Jesse looked like when he started, and this is the back of a behemoth at this point, right? Let's call it what it is. But actually built mostly just through deadlifts, and getting very strong at the deadlift, by the way.
Yeah, very strong.
So now, what's the most important thing that you can do for a deadlift though? Because I think this is obviously more of a technical lift, There are a lot of places where people can get this wrong. Because it's a big compound lift, there's a lot of joints moving at different times. I think there's a few ways that you can think about it that can make that almost automatic.
Yeah.
All right, so the basic tips that we always hear is when you approach the bar, you obviously don't want it too far out in front of you. The further out the bar is in front of you, no matter how strong you are, the harder it's going to be to break it from the floor, because you're basically getting rid of all the leverage that's working in your favor by having it out in front of you like that. So the best tip is just over your laces.
Yeah, over midfoot.
Over the midfoot. Now, from here, you go down, but you hinge to the bar to get it, right? You're trying to reinforce the right mechanics, and the hinge to the bar is the way you want to go down, not just bending from the waist.
No, not like this.
Right.
It's literally hinging.
Hinging back. So basically trying to create these creases right here that go from your thigh down towards your groin. Allow those to sort of bend themselves back. Now you grab the bar. Now you just keep the shins in contact with the bar by just moving them forward slightly, because they're only a little bit behind it if you set up properly in the first place. Now the biggest thing I see people screw up with here, and this is what I want you to focus on, is these hips are in the right position now, mechanically the best position to perform the lift with maximum strength. However, if you are told that you need to pack your lats, right, get really tight in this position, or take the slack out of the bar, what oftentimes happens is as they lift their chest up, the hips drop. You see that? That's what you want to avoid. That is the critical mistake that people make when they're getting ready to deadlift. You want to maintain that same position that you set up with. So there's a way to do it. When you're down at the bar and you're in that position, think about opening the chest just like that, and that will pack everything down and get the lats in a good tight position without moving the hips at all. From here, you push straight to the floor and you drive your hips forward. Think of this movement as a front to back move, not an up and down move, okay? Second big key here, although we've given you a few of them already, the second big key is how you lower the bar to the floor. Because if you just drop it, or just let it go like with a lot of uncontrolled speed, you're missing the other half of the lift. That's like basically doing a barbell curl up, dropping the bar to the floor, picking it up again, curl, and dropping it to the floor. We're missing the big eccentric portion of the lift. It doesn't have to take a very long period of time just to demonstrate one properly, but you're under control. You're elongating all those muscles of the posterior chain, of the back, of the traps, of the rhomboids, of the erectors, the spinal erectors. All those are getting elongated under tension, and a lot of times under extremely heavy loads. If you do this properly, guys, like I said, there's nobody walking around that has built up a heavy deadlift that has a very poor or underdeveloped back. This exercise is a sneaky builder of your entire back, even though it's not as flashy as, let's say, a pull-up or a lat pull-down or a barbell row. This is the one that will do the most for you and therefore the most effective. Exercise number 5 undoubtedly has got to be the king of lower body exercises. This should come as no surprise to you. We're talking about the squat. Obviously, if you build up a bigger, stronger squat, you're going to build bigger legs. And the good thing about this exercise is even though you can shift the focus a little bit more towards the quads with the front squat or more posterior chain if you're doing a back squat, the idea is you're still building your legs up maximally by doing the exercise. Yeah. There's really no replacement for it. However, there are a couple things that I think people don't do that cost them some of the gains they could get from the exercise, or at least along the way, not incurring some of the pains that you don't have to incur while you're trying to build up bigger, stronger legs. Yeah. Right? So here's what I want you to focus on. We're doing it without plates so you can actually see what we're talking about. The first thing is when you're getting ready, Jesse's sitting up here for a low bar squat, so down, lower on those rear delts. Now, when you get ready to initiate the movement, what happens a lot of times is people don't understand what should be happening with the hips. They know that the hips have to bend at the same time that the knees have to bend, and the coordination between those two parts oftentimes leaves people with a squat that doesn't look right because you're not moving in sync the way you should be. You need to think of the hips as a hinge, like we did before, on the squat as well, and not just lifting the low back. Because what a lot of people will do is they'll just do this. They'll just create that anterior pelvic tilt by sticking their ass out. That's not what you want to do. And a lot of people will do it either here in the setup or as they get ready to begin their descent, they do that. They stick it out. You're putting a lot of unnecessary strain on your low back, but more than that, you're taking away the advantage that you should have on the lift by doing it properly by hinging. So what instead I want you to think of is, think of what would happen if you're going to do a kettlebell swing. You drop back on a hinge like that through the hips. So think about hinging back. Keep going, and don't worry about the knees yet, Jesse. I want to show what happens. Keep going all the way back as far as you can. It starts to resemble a good morning, right? This is the position you want your hips in ultimately. Now to fix this, let the knees bend. There you go. So once the knees bend, now you're in that perfect down position. Now obviously you're not going to segment it this way. What's going to happen is you're going to think about moving the hips back in that hinge direction at the same time that you will just allow the knees to bend under you. So go back and then allow the knees to bend. You're moving everything in one unit. In other words, you're thinking of taking the torso and the hips and moving them together. And the knees are simply going along for the ride. Now when you come back up, this is where things can go wrong too, because what people do is they go down, everything could be good, but now either due to weak quads or just bad timing of the hips and knees, they start to good morning the weight back up. So they're here, and then they kind of lift the hips first, and then they come up this way, what we call squat morning. You can avoid that too by visualizing the torso, the chest, and the hips, these two big areas moving together at one time. So go down. Now if I think about just moving them together at the same time, all that desegmentation is not going to happen. Right there, straight back up again. But it starts with the hips moving back as a hinge and not simply arching the low back, because that's not just only compromising your low back, it's ultimately compromising the amount of load that you can handle, the mechanics on the exercise, and ultimately how much muscle you build from it by doing it properly. When it comes to developing a muscular physique, like Jesse, we know that at some point you're going to have to pack on some muscle to your upper torso, right? And we're not just talking about the chest, but really up here in the shoulders. And there's no better exercise, honestly, for doing that than an overhead press. So we've talked about all the different variations of it. The seated ones, not really a big fan of. The standing ones, definitely what I'm looking for you to do. I actually like some of the dumbbell variations for me or for others that have orthopedic issues, where you could press one dumbbell up over time at one time. However, if you don't have any issues in your shoulders, and even if you do, you can navigate your way around an overhead press, this is going to be the best exercise for adding the most weight to the bar, that can be progressed the most, that's ultimately going to lead to the biggest shoulders. And it's definitely one that Jesse, as you can see, has been pushing a lot of weight on and working on getting stronger and stronger at. That's led to some of this thickness that we see, not just there, but even through his upper back too, right? We know that this is a pressing exercise that even has some benefits for the upper chest if you have a slight lean back, right? But the most important thing you can do here, for me, is recruit that lower body, but also establish the right width of the grip when you're doing the exercise. See, a lot of times people will go too wide. So what happens is when they go too wide on the bar, that's a little extra wide, but they bring them in a little bit from there. When they go even there, right, what happens is the elbows themselves start to change the plane that they're in. They start to get a little bit outside into that frontal plane exclusively. And what happens is you're robbing the triceps from allowing them to contribute to the lift. Because if we can get the arms out in front of the body a little bit more by simply narrowing up the grip, you'll be amazed at how much more you can press, sometimes even 10%, 15% more, just by getting in tight. Because now with the elbows out front, the triceps are in a better position to actually extend and press into the lift and give you that little extra push. What happens when you get that extra push is you get the weights up a little bit higher and higher, you get more muscular development, right? Here's where we want these muscles to work together, right? So again, one more rep, press up and overhead, head comes through. We know all the rest of the mechanics of the lift. The most important thing, though, is setting up properly by getting the grip, and that's the easiest thing because you're doing it before you even press the bar. A lot of these tips that people try to implement, especially, when we're talking about lifts that are compound, they want you to do things while the lift is going on. It's a little hard to control sometimes when the weight's in motion, but when you could do it on a setup tip, those are the ones that really have the most effect, I think. If you come around this side of the bar now, we're talking about including the lower body into the lift. How do you ensure that your lower body can help either stabilize or contribute to the press overhead? That's where the glutes come in. Because here, people forget all about the activity of the glutes and their contribution to a heavy overhead press and a strong overhead press. What I want you to do, though, is stop doing that. You contract your glutes before you press. So literally squeeze and then press, just like that. Now, you were loose right there before I even said it, right?
No, I squeezed her before you said it.
Okay. No, I'm saying when you normally, before you even think about it. When you're not thinking about it, our body wants to remain loose there because we're thinking about just pressing with the upper body. I'm telling you that once you stabilize there, go ahead and press, you become very strong because you're plugging what we call those energy leaks that are really present on a lot of the exercises that we do. A simple mindfulness of a glute contraction, squeeze as hard as you can, is going to make the feet feel stable and grounded into the floor and transfer all that power up through your legs into your upper body and ultimately through the bar to a stronger overhead press and ultimately much bigger shoulders. So our seventh exercise is another one that targets the back. And again, if you want to look bigger, you better build up that sort of Dorito shape back, right? And that's the V shape. And though we had options for building all that thickness up with the deadlift alone won't create the entire visual that you're looking for. That's going to be devoted to some type of vertical exercise here, like the lat pull down. Now, I say the lat pull down, even though I like the weighted pull-up or the weighted chin-up. I love those exercises. But why I like this and why it's one of the only machines I actually have in my gym is because it does the job the most effectively. That's, again, what the spirit of the whole video is. Effective exercises, go ahead and grab the bar, Jesse. Because how you do this is going to determine whether or not you do it most effectively too. Again, not just what, but how. So when you're trying to target the lats and build up the width of your back, then what I want to see you do is two things. Number one, I want to see you take a little bit narrower grip. All right, so not as wide as the bend of the bar, but a little bit closer, Jesse. Come on in closer. A little bit more. A little bit more. Right about there. So I have even given the tip of using a tricep push-down bar if you really want to get into that more narrow position. Because what that will do is put your elbows out in front of your body. And what the elbows can do from this position is they can actually try to tuck into your front pockets. Visualize trying to put your elbows into your front pockets as you come down. Like that. You feel the lats?
Yep.
Because you're getting the adduction of the arm into the side, which is one of the main functions of the back and the lats. So in this position, elbows go forward, tuck them into the front pockets. Really try to drive them down into those lower lat insertions, just like that, and get that good squeeze. Now, the second thing, Jesse kind of speeding through it here, don't ever speed through the eccentric portion, especially on a lift like this. These pulling exercises are tailor-made for that amazing eccentric overload if you only allow it to happen. And to do that, all you got to do is slow the damn rep down. If you see Jesse here allowing it to go up nice and slow, you feel the reversal of the rep. You feel the lats really, really stretch out, which puts them in a good position to do the next repetition. Again, people just rush their way through this. If you want to focus on more of the upper back, if that's an area that's sort of missing some of that width, then all you have to do is get a little bit wider again if you want on the bend of the bar. But this time, Jesse, instead of keeping the elbows in, then you would just sort of let the elbows drift back behind you and sort of point. I'm going to get behind you here. Sort of point back in that direction like that. Right? So you're looking to open up the width in that direction to create more of that upper back width. So there's some versatility here too. But most of all, don't speed through these repetitions. In other words, I say don't count your reps. Instead, make your reps count. On this exercise, if you do, your lat width will definitely improve. If you do this exercise properly, it all starts, as always, with how you do it, not just what you're doing. The how you do it has to start with arm positioning from the very beginning. It's not going to start here. Because what happens from this position is people will perform something like a nose breaker or a skull crusher because they're simply they're letting their elbows bend and the target becomes straight down on top of your face. It's not that it's necessarily dangerous if you're using weight that you can handle. It's the fact that it's less effective. The more effective angle for the arms is going to be to push them back about 30 degrees or so and then lock them in and never leave them there and never move them at this point. Now you bend the elbows. It puts the bar back behind the head, most effectively putting that stretch on the triceps. And this is where you've engaged the long head of the triceps, that part, that big meaty section behind your arm that's responsible for the majority of the size of the triceps. So we're talking about effectively trying to build your triceps up with the right exercises. The ones that place the most stress on that head of the tricep is going to be the one you want to do. You take it all the way there again, and once that elbow is locked in position there, you keep it there. Now, bring it back up. If you want to do something heavier, you want to turn this into a cheat version of the exercise, similar to a cheat curl, I'm actually okay with that. At that point, you actually get a little assistance from the lats. So let's say this is even heavier than you used to. You go back there, and as you start to pull it up, you can turn to a little bit of a pullover just to get that extra assistance so that you could apply a heavier negative once again to that repetition. So let's say slightly heavier than usual, you cheat it back up a little bit with the triceps and the lats, but now you're in position for another heavy negative on that long head of the tricep. So that is going to make your arms grow really, really effectively. The last thing you can do from this position, what I love so much about this exercise is because of what we've got set up here, we're in position for what we call a mechanical drop set, meaning I'm tired, I couldn't do any more repetitions of the way Jeff was just showing me, but I could do it if I brought the bar closer to my body and then pressed it up from here. So either a close grip press or what we call a jam press down to your shoulders. So here, drop it to your shoulders and then press back up together. down, drop it to your shoulders, and then press up. Because we've shortened the length of that bar and the travel behind your head, we're able to get a few more repetitions out even when we're most fatigued. The bottom line, though, is this is the staple exercise when you're looking to effectively build bigger triceps. And so with those 8 exercises, maybe you can get the manergy that Jesse actually has and start reconstructing your own body. By the way, I want a rematch.
You want a rematch?
Yeah, right now.
All right, let's go.
All right, let's go. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Guys, full programs over at ATHLEAN-X.com. The supplements, everything that turned this guy into a beast, but, not a beast enough. Energy.